Hi, this is the norming video for third grade science constructed response for Common Assessment number 1. My name is Monica Warren and I will be walking you through some of the constructed response questions and the answers that go along with those questions. When you first open the exemplar response or the rubric, you'll find that the first page tells you the number of points each question is worth, which is a very important thing to note at first so you know how many points you're looking to award for each answer. As you move throughout the rubric, you'll find that there are some scoring guides. The CTL has put some notes that can help you as you are grading on the right-hand side. And then as you move through the constructed response, you'll find exemplar responses for each of the questions. For question number 1, it's first asking that scholars are reading the table and then interpreting the table into a graph where they can draw the graph below and also show that they know how to label a graph, give it a title that's specific to the data that's in that graph, and that they know how to use a scale, etc. So you'll find that this one question is worth up to 15 points. So the first thing that you'll be looking at, and you'll notice that I'll kind of flip back and forth between an exemplar here and the exemplar up here. So scholars can either do a bar graph, as you can see below, or they can do a line graph like you see right here. Now first note the type of graph that they use. You'll see that depending on the type of graph that they use, it is worth up to 2 points. So for example, if a bar or line graph is drawn to try to show the data, that is worth up to 2 points. 1 point is given if it is an incorrect graph or they make an attempt but maybe they do something like a pie graph that doesn't make sense for the type of data they get. And they get 0 points if they don't draw a graph at all. Maybe they rewrite the table or they do not answer the constructed response. They get 0 points. Down here you see that this is a bar graph, so this would be awarded 2 points. The next thing that you want to look at are the axes. So the vertical axes and the horizontal axes. You want to make sure that the axes are labeled correctly. So let me show you up here. You can get up to 4 points for that. You'll want one of the axes to be labeled as day and one as the temperature. Most likely you'll see that scholars who get full points on this, they will label the horizontal axes as day and the vertical axes as the temperature in degrees Celsius. So there's a big range on here up to 4 points, and you can notice this right here where maybe they invert where the day and the temperature is. Maybe they have the axes labeled, but if they reverse the unit or they reverse the words on the axes, they will be awarded 2 points. If there are no units, they should be awarded 1 point. So that's a really important thing to note. And then if the axes are just not labeled, they will get 0 points for that part. The next point to notice is the scale, and that means how did they divide up the scale on the temperature axes. So there's a number of different ways that they can do this. The most prominent answers should be counting by 1 or counting by 2 because these days of the week the temperatures are so close in numbers. So pay very close attention to the accuracy as you're looking at this, but you'll notice that it's scaled correctly 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, all the way up to 20, that the data is graphed correctly on here, so that can be awarded up to 2 points. If you look at the breakdown of the points right here, if they use an appropriate temperature scale, they get the 2 points. Let's suppose that they are trying to count by 2s, but the spacing is really off. They would only be awarded 1 point. And then if there is no scale at all, they would be awarded 0 points for that. And that would be if they just kind of make hash marks on that vertical axis, but don't actually write what those numbers mean. The next thing to note right here is the data that they actually put into the graph. The most important thing is that it is labeled with the days of the week and that all 5 days are correct and match the information in the table. So for example, Monday is 10 degrees Celsius, so Monday on the graph should be at 10 degrees Celsius. And you take a look at the breakdown. If it's correctly graphed for all 5 temperatures, they get all 4 points. If it is correct for 4 of the temperatures, they get 3 points. If they get 3 temperatures, it's 2 points. And if they only really graph 1 or 2 temperatures correctly, they get 1 point. And then 0 points if it's not graphed correctly, meaning that maybe they go all the way up to, on Monday they go all the way up to 20 and they mark it, and then each of the other ones is also off by quite a bit. The last thing to note for question number 1 is the title. So there's several different titles that you may see. The most important thing with the title is that they're including the independent and the dependent variable within the title. So that means that they actually note something about the temperature and the days of the week. So you'll see the example response would be something along the lines of temperature of days of week, and some other things that you might see are temperatures of the week, temperatures of the week, days and temperature. All of those would be awarded the full 3 points. If you take a look up here, if there is an appropriate title but it does not include either the independent variable or the dependent variable, so for example, if they label it as temperature, they would only be awarded 2 points for that. Or if they label the graph as days of the week, they would only be awarded 2 points. Let's suppose they do write a title, but it doesn't really fit the graph. So for example, if they write the title as bar graph, they would get 1 point for putting a title in, but it would only be the 1 point because it is not specific to the data in that table. And then if they do not write a title, they get 0 points awarded for that section. So again, this can also look like a line graph as you see above right here. So that would be the full 15 points for question number 1. So we're going to move on to question number 2. Question number 2 is only worth up to 5 points, so it can be a little bit easier to grade because of that. So the first thing that you'll notice is that scholars will have to read this information of an experiment that 2 scholars did, and then what each scholar did, Michael and Carmen, and then they have to determine whether or not it was the best setup, who had the best setup, and then why they had the best setup, and then what they might do differently. And so each part, there's an A, a B, and a C. If you'll come back up to the rubric, you'll see that A is worth 1 point, B is worth up to 3 points, and then C is worth up to 1 point. And so the best way to go about doing this is to take a look at the exemplar response. So you'll see that the first question asks who had the best setup. They can write Carmen, they can write Carmen has the best setup, they can write Carmen was right. They could also write something along the lines of Michael did not have the best setup, and that would be awarded 1 out of 1 points. If they say that Michael had the best setup, they get 0 points, or if they write that Carmen was wrong, they get 0 points. If you notice up here at the top, for each of the pots that the scholars in the question had, they had 3 pots. You'll notice that Carmen kept constant the amount of water and the temperature so that she could really see whether or not sunlight affected the pots, whereas Michael made temperature different, and then and because of that, he wasn't able to see if the sunlight, which is what they were looking for in part A, if the sunlight is what was changing the growth of the pea plants. So if you come down to number 2, it basically just asks scholars to answer whether or not, if they chose Michael, why he had the best setup, or if they chose Carmen, why they think she had the best setup. The first thing is, if they think that Michael had the best setup, they are automatically awarded 0 points for this section. You can see right down here, 0 points if scholars chose Michael for question 2A. If they pick Carmen, though, they can be awarded up to 3 points, really explaining their answer thoroughly, saying that Carmen gave a different or a varied amount of sunlight. Carmen also kept the water amount constant or the same, and then also that Carmen kept the temperature the same. This may look like bullet points, it may look like a paragraph. As long as they have those 3 points, they can be awarded a point for each. If they only write something like Carmen has the best setup because she gave a different amount of sunlight, that would be awarded 1 point. And so on for the other ones. They're awarded 1 point per point that they make for this part. And then for part C, look at the scholar you did not choose for part A. So the correct answer would be Michael. And so what do you think affected the plant growth for this setup? And if you notice up here, because he made different the temperature is what was affecting those plants, not the amount of sunlight, which is what the question is asking about. So down here, you'll notice a great response would just be that for Michael's pots, temperature affected the plant growth, or something like temperature made Michael's setup fail, and they get 1 point for that. With all of these questions for part A, B, and C, these are ideal answers. You'll notice up in the rubric, more than anything, you want scholars to indicate or explain or identify something about that. So for part A, something about, for part B, something about that explains why Carmen's setup was the best. If you have any questions, maybe a scholar gives you an answer that seems to be correct but isn't a part of the rubric, or if you have any other questions, if you go to your Blackboard course site where you found this norming video, there is a discussion board, and underneath that discussion board you can post your question, and either the CTL or myself will be checking that regularly to be able to answer your questions. Thank you.